your life didn't start breaking down 2 years ago. It was resistance going on until it reached a sort of critical mass, so to speak, where it began manifesting in a more dramatic way. But contrast is always manageable, no matter what.
Yes.
So rather than trying to get you to think a thought differently than the thought that you've been thinking, we want to appeal to your logic by saying to you, this vortex of creation, which we asked you earlier, do you believe in the reality of this vibrational reality? And most of you can feel the reality of this vibrational reality. And then we say to you, you can't see what's in there, you can't hear what's in there, you can't smell what's in there. Your physical senses aren't going to help you to discern this vibrational reality, not at first and not from your outside viewpoint. But if you will accept that this vibrational reality is a vibrational place that you can feel, and you will try to find it through emotions rather than through thoughts. In other words, rather than thinking with your logic, feel with us for a little bit. Something happened in Esther's experience not too long ago that took her outside the vortex. Now, we acknowledge that she allowed it, but it took her outside the vortex. And when you're used to hanging around in there, a little excursion outside the vortex is not pleasant. Esther's friend Karen said, I have a 24-hour out of the vortex bug. Esther liked that. In other words, meaning there's something that I'm working on that makes it easier to be out than in. So we said to Esther, focus with us on some words. Let's go through the alphabet. Let's start with the letter A and just try to find what you think is an inside the vortex word that starts with A. And right away, Esther thought of some. She said, appreciation. Now, she wasn't feeling it. It was just a mental exercise. Appreciation, she said. We said, what else? Allowing. Wasn't feeling it. It was just a word. But what else? Alignment. So now, by the time she found her third A word, we said, now, go back over them. See if you can find the feeling of appreciation. Well, she couldn't, but it was fun asking. So then we said, now let's move to B. Can you think of a word that begins with the letter B that you would think would be considered an inside the vortex word? And Esther right away thought of basking. Now, basking moved her energy a little bit because Esther is a basker. Sometimes she and Jerry will find something and they'll just beat it to death. Anybody watching them would run away sometimes at the appreciation that they're feeling. So Esther just stayed in the vibration of basking, just thinking about basking. We said to her, what is basking? And she said, no, I don't know, what is it? And we said, basking is looking around your immediate vicinity for something to feel good about. So, basking. What else? Balance, but basking by far felt the best. Then we moved to the C's. What is a C word? Clarity. Oh, Esther loves that feeling of clarity. In opposition to confusion, the feeling of clarity moved her still further. Then she went into D, delicious, she thought. E, she thought of energy. Ease. Oh, the ease word. The ease word hit her right in the right spot. Ease, she thought. Ease. She felt palpable relief in the idea of ease. 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 And then she went to F, flow. Ease and flow. Ease and flow. She just hung around there in ease and flow. Then she went on to G for goodness, and H for happy, and I for inspired, and J for Jerry. In other words, just reaching for no reason other than to focus and feel and focus and feel and focus and feel and focus and feel. We are just saying anything that you can do. The reason that we are encouraging it in the way that we are is because You have no choice when you're all wadded up in the details of your life experience, and the details of your life experience are outside the vortex, so you keep asking for more and not going, and asking for more and not going, and asking for more and not going, and asking for more and not going. The next logical step for someone like you who wants with everything that you are to feel good is a croaking experience. We can feel you somewhat resistant even to the silly game that we're offering here, because you are so accustomed to thinking. But you know, when you've trained your mind into thinking yourself into a corner, 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 sometimes it's better to stop thinking. We teach our friends meditation because it's easier to teach you to have no thought at all than to have pure positive thought when you've already got yourself ratcheted up in a very negative way on things, you see. So we so enjoy the power of your mind. But we want to say to you, you have to find a way of relaxing that powerful focus. And when you do, you will move into the vortex so quickly, you have not even begun to taste the sweetness of the alignment that is waiting for you. Imagine a cork bobbing on the surface of the water, and see that perspective, that position on the water as pure positive energy, connection to source and to all that is good. Now hold that cork under the water. That's what negative emotion is. But in the moment that you let go of it, it bobs right back to the surface again. So what we're saying to you, in the releasing of the thought that you've trained yourself into, you'll bob back to the surface. The vortex will take you in. You can do it a little every single day. But the thing that we want you to understand is that through all of this sorting and sifting, you have done all the asking. You've made all of the decisions one at a time, and they're all in your vortex and they're all queued up. You've done the work. Now your work is to play on the beach. Now your work is to release resistance. Now your work is to appreciate and bask and find clarity and look for delicious ease and flow. In other words, your work is to look for feelings that feel good. Your work is non-work. Your work is release and relief and release and relief and release and relief. And it is our promise to you that you will find all of those answers. They are all queued up for you. You just got to get in the vortex. That's what this whole conversation is about. You just got to get in the vortex. You just got to get in the vortex. But that makes it sound like something that you got to do. So what we really want to say, first time ever, thank you very much. You just got to stop being outside the vortex. You just got to stop clinging to what's out of the vortex. You got to loosen your grip on outside the vortex. You got to play more. You got to laugh more. You got to have more fun. You got to release more. You got to think less. You want to meditate more. You want to bask more. In other words, don't make it a thinking game. Let it be a feeling game. And then watch what happens. So much there for you. So, for example, let's say that you don't have enough money. Your bills are piling up. You're really feeling worried, which is your emotional indicator that you're focused differently than the source within you is focused. But let's say, and it is perfectly logical, you're experiencing a financial shortage and you are worried. So that's how you're standing in your physical body. Well, every time you focus upon this shortage, this problem of shortage, you are creating an equivalent solution. And your inner being is holding steady to the vibration of the solution. If we were talking about physical well-being, when your physical body is sick, you create a vibrational wellness that is more than was there before you got sick. In the same way that when you are experiencing exaggerated shortage, you're creating a vibrational equivalent of abundance that is more than it was before you experienced your shortage. So the problem actually, which as it came into focus, actually caused you to bring into focus an equivalent solution to which you do not have access while you are still worried. Your worry, in fact, is your emotional indicator that lets you know you are doing the problem part of the equation while the source within you is doing the solution part of the equation. But you, in your physical form, cannot have access to the solution as long as the problem is what is most active in your vibration. So many people say, well, then show me the money. inner being, smarty pants that you are, standing over there with all of my abundance, fork it over. Give me the abundance, and when I see it, I will feel better. And we say, of course you would feel better if you could see the solution to your problem. But you have to find the solution to your problem vibrationally before it can manifest. You have to withdraw your attention from the problem before the solution can come into view. So you have something to think about all day, every day. Esther has really been pondering this recently. How much attention to the problem does this particular creative experience deserve? Because there is a tipping point. In other words, of course, poking around on the problem, living life, you came to do that. You came to expand the universe by knowing what you don't want and knowing what you do want. But there is a time, and all of you have to decide when it is for you, that you're willing to say, all right, I've poked around at this problem significantly enough to create a really good solution. Now I think I'll tune myself to the solution rather than to the problem. And the answer to when that is simply this. How much discomfort am I willing to endure before I let go of the problem and let the solution show itself to me? Really, that's the only thing that makes the difference. Now, of course, most people, Esther included, who is standing in the attitude of poking around at the problem, immediately feels the discord of being a vibrational match to the problem rather than to the solution. And then something interesting kicks in for most of you. Because you now don't feel good, it feels like you should explain why you don't feel good and how bad it is that you don't feel good and whose fault it is that you don't feel good. In other words, you begin to justify your discordant relationship with who you are by hammering longer at what's wrong with this. Esther, over the years, has said things to us such as, well, it's true, as if that is any kind of criteria to use. In other words, it's true, this thing I'm using to make myself miserable and keep myself from the solution that I have already created. And we say, no one is questioning the truth of these things because you can't focus upon anything for very long without making it true. That's a terrible criteria. It's true. It's true. And so I focus on it. We say, cancer's true. Do you want some? Plundering, rapes, murder, all true. You want some of that? If you focus upon those things just because they are true, you open yourself to all kinds of things unwanted as well as wanted. We think a different criteria is in order. So rather than saying it's true, why not ask yourself, how does it feel? How does it feel? Because sometimes you can poke around on what you consider to be a problem and it feels interesting. And we want to say to you, we've never said it to you before, that if you are poking in the direction of what feels like a problem and it feels interesting, you're still in the vortex. In other words, if it still feels interesting, you are not separating yourself from who you are. You're working the contrast in a productive way from inside the vortex, because in every particle of the universe, even where we stand in non-physical, there is wanted and unwanted. The difference between where we stand is that the differentiation between our wanted and our unwanted is so slight you could not from your physical platform even perceive it. So really, what we're wanting you to sort of come to an awareness of today, in the time that we are together, is how much grief am I willing to endure for the sake of expansion? And if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would say none. Because you don't have to separate yourself from who you really are and what you want so long that you deprive yourself of the energy of alignment for so long that you are in grief or fear or despair. That's way, way, way overkill for what you intended when you decided to come forth and be a creator in this physical body. Are you understanding what we're getting at? Some of you have been listening to us for a while, and we want to say to you that we think that you have done enough poking around in the contrast of your life experience to keep yourself happily busy in the manifestation for 20 or 30 lifetimes. We really do not think that you really owe anything to anybody and that you need to torture yourself into